I was 12 the night my life split in half. It started in a little roadside diner on the edge of Oak Ridge, the kind of place with sticky red booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. My dad, Daniel Brooks, had taken me there after my soccer practice. He always let me order fries and a chocolate shake, even when Mom said no. It should have been just another night. But halfway through our meal, Dad excused himself to the restroom. A few minutes later, a sound broke through the chatter of silverware and the sizzle of the kitchen grill, a shout. Then a crash. People rushed toward the hallway, and when Dad came out, his shirt was spattered with blood. His eyes were wild, his hands shaking. But nobody listened to his words. They only saw the blood. Within minutes, the police stormed in. They found a man in the restroom, stabbed, dead on the floor. And they found Dad standing outside the stall, still begging someone to help. The cops handcuffed him right in front of me. I remember screaming, trying to run to him, but an officer blocked me. Dad looked at me once over his shoulder, his voice steady even while his eyes shined with fear. "Stay strong, kiddo. I didn't do this." That was the last thing he said before they dragged him away. The trial was quick, too quick. Prosecutors painted him as a man who'd snapped in a drunken rage. They said he killed the victim over some petty argument. No matter what Dad's lawyer argued, the jury didn't care. The evidence was stacked, his fingerprints on the stall door, his clothes soaked in blood, no other suspect in sight. I sat in that courtroom, fists balled in my lap, whispering over and over that they had it wrong. But nobody heard me. When the judge pronounced him guilty of manslaughter, my mother sobbed into her hands. I didn't cry, not yet. That night, I stayed awake in my room, staring at the ceiling while Mom paced the kitchen. The house felt hollow, like someone had ripped its heart out. And then, just 5 months later, she brought home a stranger. His name was Marcus. He was tall, with a salesman's smile and cologne so heavy it filled the whole living room. Mom called him her new beginning. When she introduced him to me, she said something that made my stomach turn. "Sweetie, I want you to start thinking of Marcus as your new dad. Your father, he's not coming back." At first, I thought Marcus was just passing through. A boyfriend, nothing serious. But within weeks, his toothbrush was in our bathroom, his boots lined up by the front door, and his voice booming through every room like he already owned the place. Mom seemed younger around him. She dressed up for dinner, laughed too hard at his corny jokes, and acted like the past had been erased. She even stopped visiting Dad in prison, stopped mentioning his name. When I asked why, she snapped, "Daniel made his choices. I won't waste my life chained to a criminal." Marcus encouraged that. He'd clap a heavy hand on my shoulder and say things like, "Your mom deserves better. Don't you want her to be happy?" His smile was too polished, his eyes too sharp. I didn't trust him. The first real warning came one night at dinner. Mom excused herself to grab dessert, leaving me alone with Marcus. He leaned back in Dad's old chair, staring at me over the rim of his glass. "You're growing up fast," he said, voice low. "Pretty soon, the boys in town are gonna notice. You need a strong father figure to keep you safe." His words slithered under my skin. I forced a nod, hoping Mom would hurry back. Later that night, I told her what he'd said. She laughed, like I'd misunderstood. "Don't be dramatic. He's just trying to connect with you." But when I went to bed, Marcus stood in my doorway for a long minute, arms crossed, eyes glinting in the dark. He didn't say a word, just watched me until I pulled the covers over my head and pretended to sleep. That was the moment I realized Mom wouldn't protect me. I started writing letters to Dad in secret. At school, I'd borrow my friend Lily's address so Marcus and Mom wouldn't see the envelopes. Dad wrote back, through prison email at first. His messages were always the same, reminders that he loved me, that I should stay brave, that one day the truth would come out. But Marcus grew bolder. He demanded I call him Dad. If I slipped and said Daniel's name, he'd grab my wrist until my bones ached. Once, when Mom was in the shower, he whispered in my ear, "Naughty girls who don't respect their fathers, they always pay for it." When I told Mom about that, she didn't even look up from folding laundry. "You're exaggerating again. Marcus is trying. Don't ruin this for me." I wanted to scream. Instead, I retreated deeper into my letters with Dad, pouring everything onto paper that no one else would read. I told Dad everything. how school felt like walking underwater, how I missed his dumb jokes, how Marcus filled the house with his cologne and fake charm. I even admitted how scared I was, though I tried to soften it so he wouldn't worry. Lily helped me smuggle the letters. On Mondays, I'd slip the envelope into her backpack. She'd mail it from her house so Mom and Marcus couldn't track it. Dad wrote back through the prison email system, and I'd sneak into the library to log in under a fake name. His messages came short and stiff, every word monitored, but I could still hear him in them. He always signed off the same way: "Stay strong, kiddo. Don't let him win." But Marcus was winning. One Saturday morning, while Mom went grocery shopping, Marcus cornered me in the kitchen. He pressed his hand against the counter, boxing me in. His breath reeked of coffee and bourbon. "You're a stubborn little thing," he muttered. "Your mother tells me you're still writing to that man. You need to let go. Daniel isn't coming back. I'm your father now." My stomach dropped. I'd been careful. Too careful. How did he know? "I'm not writing anyone," I said, voice trembling. He smirked, leaning closer. "Lying doesn't suit you, but that's all right. We'll work it out, one way or another." When Mom returned, I ran to her, shaking, desperate for her to see what he really was. But Marcus slipped behind her, arms sliding around her waist, lips brushing her cheek. He looked at me over her shoulder, smiling like a wolf. Mom sighed. "You two have to get along. Please, for me." That night, I wrote Dad a letter I didn't dare send. I poured every ugly truth onto the page: Marcus's grip on my wrist, the way he stared, the threat in his voice. I folded it and tucked it into my shoebox, heart hammering. A week later, I came home from school and found the shoebox gone. Panic clawed through me. I tore my room apart, searching. Nothing. When I stepped into the hallway, Marcus was there, holding the box in his hand. He tossed it lightly, like it was a toy. "Looking for this?" I froze. My chest went tight. He opened the lid and pulled out the unsent letter. My words, my fear, my truth. He read a line out loud, chuckling low. "You think anyone's gonna believe this? You think your mom's gonna take your side over mine?" He crumpled the letter in his fist, leaned close enough for me to smell the bourbon again, and whispered, "You belong to this house now. You don't get to run." I wanted to scream, but what could I say? I was 14, stuck in the passenger seat of his truck while he gripped the wheel and whistled along to the radio. We drove 3 hours north to a chain hotel off the interstate. From the outside it looked harmless: rows of beige rooms, a pool with kids splashing, neon lights buzzing above the parking lot. But the moment we checked in, I felt like I'd been dragged into a cage. The first night, Mom claimed she was exhausted and fell asleep early. Marcus and I ended up in the lobby, sitting by the vending machines. He bought me a Coke and leaned back in his chair like he was doing me a favor. "You know," he said, "this trip is about trust. About you learning to accept me." I stared at the floor, praying for him to shut up. But he didn't. "You're a pretty girl. Your mom was too, when she was your age." He chuckled, slow and deliberate. "Beauty runs in the family." My stomach churned. I bolted up, muttered that I was tired, and went back to the room. The second night was worse. Mom had taken a sleeping pill. I knew because I saw her swallow it with water, desperate for rest. Within minutes, she was out cold. Marcus came in later, smelling of whiskey, and sat at the edge of my bed. I pretended to be asleep, holding my breath. His hand brushed my blanket. Then my arm. "Don't fight me," he whispered. "I'm the only one who really cares about you." My whole body locked. I wanted to scream, to shove him off, but fear pinned me down. At the last second, I jerked away, rolling to the floor with a thud loud enough to wake Mom, if the pills hadn't already pulled her under. Marcus crouched, his smile crooked, his voice a hiss. "You tell anyone about this, and I'll make sure your father never breathes free air again." I know people inside. One word from me, and accidents happen. He let me crawl back onto the bed, trembling, staring at Mom's sleeping form. She didn't stir. She never knew. The next morning at breakfast, Marcus passed me the syrup like nothing had happened. Mom laughed at something he said, resting her head against his shoulder. I wanted to grab her and shake her awake, but her eyes were blind to him. That trip ended with postcards and pictures, Mom smiling, Marcus's arm around her, me in the corner, stiff as stone. No one looking at those photos would ever see the truth. One rainy Saturday, Mom sent me up to the attic to fetch old photo albums. The attic was a place Marcus rarely went, too dusty, too cramped for a man who liked being in control. I pulled the string light, climbed over boxes, and started digging. That's when I found it. Buried beneath a crate of Christmas decorations was an old metal toolbox. I recognized it immediately. It was Dad's. He used to keep it in the garage, locked tight, saying some things weren't meant for curious kids' fingers. The lock was rusted, easy to pry open with a screwdriver. Inside wasn't tools, though. It was notebooks. The top one was a worn leather journal. My father's handwriting filled the pages, messy, quick strokes like he'd written in a rush. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, flipping through. At first, it was just notes about bills, Mom's birthday, little reminders. But then the entries turned darker. March 12th, I think someone's following me. Same blue sedan outside the diner 2 nights in a row. March 18th, argument at work today. I know too much about the contracts. If anything happens to me, it won't be random. March 25th, met with Frank again. He warned me to keep quiet. Said people disappear over less.
The last entry was dated just 2 days before the night at the diner. March 30. If they're planning something, I need to protect Sarah. If I get caught in the middle, she has to know I never wanted this. She has to know I'm innocent. My chest tightened. Dad hadn't just stumbled into a crime. He'd been dragged into something bigger. And someone had made sure he took the fall. I stuffed the journal under my hoodie and carried it back to my room, my heart pounding the whole way down the attic stairs. That night, while Marcus and Mom watched TV, I read every page. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became. My father hadn't killed that man. He had been silenced, framed. But how? By who? I wanted to ask Dad directly, but I knew Marcus was watching my every move. If he ever found out about the journal, he'd destroy it like he destroyed my letters, so I hid it beneath a loose floorboard under my bed. Every chance I got, I studied it, memorizing names, dates, fragments of a puzzle that didn't yet make sense. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. At first it was little things. He'd walk into my room without knocking, scan my desk like he was cataloging every pencil. He'd ask strange questions at dinner. What have you been reading lately? You still writing those silly stories? Mom thought he was making small talk. I knew better. One evening, I came home from school and found my mattress flipped, drawers open, clothes scattered. Marcus was sitting in my chair, arms folded, expression calm, as if he'd been waiting for me. Looking for something? He asked. I froze in the doorway, blood draining from my face. I don't know what you mean. He smirked. You're hiding something. I'll find it. And when I do, you're gonna wish you'd trusted me. I didn't breathe until he finally left the room, whistling as he went. That night, I moved the journal again, into a backpack I kept zipped tight under my bed. I hardly slept. Every creak of the house made me think Marcus was coming back. Meanwhile, Mom was slipping further away. She'd stopped asking how I felt, stopped noticing my grades slipping. Marcus had her wrapped so tight in his arms she couldn't see anything else. One night I tried to bring it up. Mom, I whispered while Marcus was in the shower. You don't see what he's doing. He scares me. Her face tightened like I'd slapped her. Sarah, enough. You have to stop making him the enemy. Marcus loves you. He's trying. He doesn't love me. My voice cracked. Stop. Her eyes turned cold like I was talking to a stranger. I won't hear it. And just like that, the door slammed shut.
I turned back to the journal for answers. The names in it, Frank, Victor, Blue Sedan, meant nothing to me yet, but I copied them onto a separate sheet and folded it into my pocket. If Marcus ever found the journal, at least I'd keep the map of my father's truth. But danger was closing in. One afternoon after school, Lily pulled me aside. Her voice was low, urgent. Sarah, I think your stepdad went through my mailbox. I blinked. What? She nodded. My neighbor saw him parked outside our house yesterday. Just sitting there, watching. You think he knows about the letters? Fear punched me in the gut. If Marcus had traced the letters back to Lily, it was only a matter of time before he figured out the rest. That night, I heard him outside my room again. His footsteps paused at my door, long enough to make my heart thud against my ribs. Then, slowly, they moved on. I clutched the journal against my chest under the covers, whispering Dad's last entry to myself like a prayer. She has to know I'm innocent. I hadn't seen Uncle Ray in years. Dad's older brother was a ghost in family stories, a man who drank too much, fought too hard, and disappeared when things got complicated. Mom never spoke his name without bitterness. So when he showed up at school one afternoon, leaning against a rusted Chevy pickup, I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was grayer, his jaw rough with stubble, but his eyes, those sharp, steady eyes, were my father's. Sarah, he said quietly, like testing the word in his mouth. You look just like your dad. I froze. No one said that anymore. Not Mom, not Marcus, especially not Marcus. What are you doing here? I asked, clutching my backpack like a shield. He glanced around, lowered his voice. Your dad sent me a letter from inside. He said you might be in trouble. My throat tightened. Dad had never mentioned Ray. But something in his voice made me want to believe. We sat in his truck, the air thick with old cigarette smoke. Ray handed me an envelope. Inside was a scrap of paper in Dad's handwriting. Trust Ray. He knows more than I could write. Tears stung my eyes. For the first time in forever, I wasn't alone. I told him about Marcus, carefully, not everything, but enough. Ray's jaw clenched, his fists tightening on the steering wheel. That bastard, he muttered. I knew Daniel didn't kill that man. I told the cops, but they wouldn't listen. Too easy to pin it on the guy with a temper. My pulse jumped. You believe him? You believe he's innocent? Of course I do. Ray leaned closer. Your dad got caught in the middle of something dirty. That victim, Carter, he wasn't just some stranger. He was tied to people who wanted to keep their business quiet. Real quiet. I thought of the journal upstairs, the names scrawled in the margins. Dad wrote about men following him. A blue sedan. Contracts at work. Ray's eyes narrowed. Show me. That night, after Mom fell asleep, I sneaked Ray into the house. He was careful, moving like someone who'd learned to stay invisible. In my room, I pulled the journal from its hiding place and handed it over. He read silently for a long time, lips tightening. Finally, he looked at me. This is enough to get people asking questions. Maybe even enough to shake something loose. He paused. But if Marcus finds out you've got this, it won't just be your dad in danger. It'll be you. As if on cue, the floor creaked down the hall. Marcus's heavy footsteps. Ray shoved the journal back into my hands and motioned for silence. We killed the light. My heart pounded as Marcus's shadow stretched across the crack under my door. He lingered, waiting, listening. Then, after what felt like forever, he moved on. Ray whispered, voice like gravel, we don't have much time, kid. If you want the truth, you'll have to fight for it. Uncle Ray didn't waste time. 2 days after our attic meeting, he showed up again, this time with a file folder stuffed under his arm. We sat in his truck behind the library, windows fogged, the smell of gasoline thick in the air. This is what I've been digging up, he said, flipping the folder open. Inside were photocopies, old newspaper clippings, arrest reports, and grainy photos. One name kept appearing again and again, Marcus Kane. I stared at the pages, my pulse hammering. That's him. Ray nodded grimly. Before he met your mom, before he changed his last name, he had a record. Assault, embezzlement, even a domestic violence charge that mysteriously got dropped. Then, poof, he vanishes for a few years. Shows back up squeaky clean, with a smile and a new story. My hands shook as I picked up a clipping from 2011, local contractor tied to shady business dealings. In the photo, half hidden in the background, was Marcus. Younger, thinner, but unmistakable. Ray tapped the page. Your father was digging into the same contracts Marcus was tied to. That's no coincidence. Marcus had motive. Hell, he had everything to gain from your dad taking the fall. The air in the cab went thin. My whole body buzzed with a sick kind of clarity. Ray, I whispered, if we can prove this, if we can connect Marcus to Carter, Dad could get out, he finished for me. His voice was hard, but his eyes softened. But listen, Sarah, we're playing with fire. Men like Marcus don't just walk away when the walls close in. They burn the house down first. I folded the papers carefully, tucking them into my backpack. For the first time since Dad's arrest, the truth felt close enough to touch. But that night, danger came knocking. I'd barely finished dinner when Marcus pulled me aside. His smile was sharp, stretched too tight. You've been busy, he said, voice smooth as glass. Sneaking around, meeting people. My throat went dry. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do. He leaned close, his breath hot on my ear. See, the thing about secrets is, they never stay hidden. And if I find out you're working against me, I'll bury every piece of evidence you've got. Along with anyone stupid enough to help you. He let me go with a pat on the cheek, as if he hadn't just threatened my life. I locked myself in my room, trembling, clutching my backpack like it was a lifeline. That night I called Ray from the school payphone. My voice shook. He knows. There was a pause, then Ray said, then we move faster. There's a man I trust. A reporter. We get this in the right hands, Marcus won't be able to hide. I hung up, heart pounding. For the first time, Marcus wasn't just the monster in our house. He was the monster everyone needed to see. And I had the smoking gun. Mom had gone to bed early, worn down by another one of Marcus's fake, romantic dinners. The house was dark, the air heavy, the kind that pressed on your skin like a warning. I was at my desk, the journal hidden under my backpack, when the door creaked open. Marcus stepped inside. No knock, no smile, just those cold eyes. You've been busy, he said. His voice was low, dangerous. Running around with your uncle. Poking your nose where it doesn't belong. My chest tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. He chuckled, shaking his head. Don't play dumb. I saw you with Ray. And I know about the journal. You think you're clever, but you're just like your father, too stubborn to stay out of things that don't concern you. My hands balled into fists. It does concern me. He's my dad, and you framed him. That broke the mask. His jaw clenched, his eyes flared. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss.
Your father was a fool. He wouldn't take the payoff. Kept asking questions about Carter's death, about the money moving through those contracts. He wouldn't shut up, so I made sure someone else did the shutting for him. My heart slammed against my ribs. I forced myself to hold his stare. So you admit it. You set him up. Marcus leaned in so close I could feel his breath. Of course I did. Who do you think called the cops that night? Who do you think planted the knife? Your dad had a temper, everyone knew it. The jury barely needed convincing. I swallowed hard, every nerve screaming. Why? Why him? His smile turned cruel. Because he was in my way, and because your mother was too blind to see what kind of man he really was. She needed someone stronger, smarter, better, and I gave her that. My stomach twisted. Stronger? Better? He was a parasite. You ruined our lives, I spat.
No, his voice was calm now, eerily calm. I saved them. Without me, your mother would be broke, you'd be forgotten, and your father, well, he was always going to self-destruct. I just sped up the process. He straightened, smoothing his shirt, like the monster had been tucked neatly back inside. Here's the thing, Sarah. Nobody's going to believe you. Not your mother, not the cops, not anyone. And if you try, you'll end up like him. He walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. I sat frozen, my body shaking. The words replayed in my head, sharp and undeniable. I planted the knife. I called the cops. The confession I'd prayed for, the proof I'd needed, it was mine now. But so was the danger. I knew two things. I finally had enough to bring him down. He would never let me live if he thought I'd repeat those words. At dawn, I called Ray from the payphone behind the gas station. He admitted it, I whispered. I heard it with my own ears. Ray's breath caught. Then it's time. By afternoon, we were ready. The plan was simple, but it had to be flawless. I'd wear a recorder Ray borrowed from his reporter friend, push Marcus into another rant, and catch everything. Ray would be close, waiting. Then we'd hand it all over to the reporter, and to the cops if we had to. But nothing about Marcus was simple. That evening, while Mom was upstairs showering, Marcus cornered me in the kitchen. His smile was too smooth, his eyes too sharp. "You've been quiet, kid. Makes me think you're hiding something again." I forced my voice steady. "Maybe you should worry less about me and more about what happens when people find out what you did to my dad." The change was instant. His face twisted, rage snapping through the cracks. "You little," and he started the rant, just like Ray said he would. Words poured out, venom and pride tangled together. How he planted the evidence, how he pulled strings to bury the investigation, how my father was too weak to survive the game. All of it caught, every syllable, on the tiny recorder taped under my sleeve. Then, footsteps. Heavy. Ray stepped through the back door, voice booming, "That's enough, Kane." Marcus froze. His face drained, then twisted again. "You." Ray didn't flinch. "You set my brother up. You tore this family apart. But tonight, you're finished." Marcus lunged, his hand closing around the nearest knife on the counter. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. For a second, it felt like history repeating, another Kane, another blade, another family destroyed. But Ray was faster. He grabbed Marcus's wrist, twisted hard. The knife clattered to the floor. The two men grappled, crashing into the table, sending plates shattering. "Run, Sarah," Ray barked. But I didn't run. My hand dove into my backpack, pulling out the recorder. I held it up, voice shaking but loud. "It's all here, Marcus." Every word. "You're done." His eyes widened, panic flashing for the first time. He shoved Ray away and bolted for the door. Outside, headlights flared. A car screeched to a stop. Ray's reporter friend stepped out, phone raised, recording. Marcus froze on the porch like a hunted animal. Trapped. By the time the cops arrived, Marcus was cuffed and spitting curses. Mom came downstairs in a towel, her face pale, her world unraveling. She looked at me, then at Ray, then at the officers leading Marcus away. And for the first time, she saw the truth. That night, I sat on the porch with Ray. The journal lay in my lap, its pages worn, its secrets finally free. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. "She has to know I'm innocent." And now I did. The climb wasn't over. My father was still behind bars, the road to clearing his name long and winding. But for the first time, I felt the weight shift. For the first time, I felt free. If you've been hooked on Sarah's fight for the truth, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more dark, gripping stories like this one. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Sarah's place? And hit that notification bell so you never miss the next twist. Until then, stay sharp, because sometimes the monsters live right at home.